It's really easy to forget just how humble beginnings the biggest multimedia franchise of all time had. Pokemon Red and Green were practically made by 12-ish guys barely scraping by, even having to do random odd jobs like the software for the Game Boy camera or Yoshi or Pulseman just to fund their real projects. It's a miracle this game was finished at all. But you probably already know the story. You know that this dumb yellow mouse is named Sonic. This little game sparked a global phenomenon that still exists over 25 years later and generates billions. That's not just impressive, that's monumental. And that makes Pokemon Red and Blue kinda weird to try and review for me. Despite Pokemon being so successful, there's not as many in-depth reviews of them as you'd expect there to be. Except for Red and Blue, which made the flaws a lot more well known. We all know how every move has a 1 in 256 chance of missing, we all know about the balance issues, we all know about missing no. It's all stuff that was fixed by the next game. But you know what, let's talk about this stuff anyway. Pokemon's always been one of my favorites, but for some reason a lot of fans hate it when you point out anything bad about them. Which is stupid. Do y'all not realize that criticism is a good thing? It's how you improve. There's a lot of value in looking at things through a critical lens. Even if your opinion doesn't change overall, you might find more things you like about it or build a better appreciation for it. And Pokemon is no exception. Pokemon is a series I've wanted to really cover ever since I started this channel 5 years ago, damn. So let's finally start off with a game that started it all. The one that's been talked about way more than the others. Here is Pokemon Red and Blue. I really hope I don't have to explain what Pokemon is. You catch and battle with monsters in your pocket. That's what it's short for. Pocket monsters. You're quickly brought up to speed on what these things are, and they just throw you in. Professor Oak saves you from near death as you almost walk into tall grass completely defenseless, and you get to pick one of 3 to start with. Then your dickbag of a rival picks the starter that has a type advantage over yours. His name is Blue, but most people just go with Asshat. The dick rival trope isn't one that I dislike, and it works pretty well in this game. Blue is a cocky asshole that's always pointing out how much better he is than you, yet losing every time because he's not usually very difficult. Despite that, he's still somehow always one step ahead of you, getting every gym badge before you, and even beating Elite Four before you. But the important part is that he always picks a starter with a type advantage over yours, encouraging you to actually catch more Pokemon. No matter what starter you pick, you always have to deal with something he's weak to, because there's this whole ass type chart of strengths and weaknesses for each Pokemon type. You can't just use Squirtle all the time, because you know you're gonna have to deal with grass types at some point. Why not pick up a Pidgey or Spearow to try and deal with that? At least that's the idea. The reality is that the early game is a massive uphill battle. First gym leader only uses rock types, which 2 out of the 3 starters are luckily strong against. But even if you pick up another long-term party member, you still have to make sure you learn Bubble, Vine Whip, or you're not getting anywhere without grinding a bit. Alternatively, Charmander is weak to the first gym, making this slow start even slower. Instead of making it a lesson in type advantages, heavily encouraging you to use more than just your starter, all you can do is grind it out until you eventually win through brute force. Despite the fact that you go through the Viridian Forest to get here, there's not a single grass type that you can catch in it. In fact, if you choose Charmander, there isn't a single super effective move that you can use against Brock until after you beat him. You can't win with neutral moves either. Brock resists everything you can learn early on except Bubble and Vine Whip. And if you're playing Yellow, you may end up having a worse time. In Yellow, your starter is always Pikachu, and because every Pokemon in the first gym is at least part ground, they're immune to Pikachu's only early attacking move and then resists every other move you can learn. Luckily, Nidoran gets Double Kick early on, and you can also catch a Mankey west of Viridian City. But in the likely event that you didn't know that there's something invaluable on an otherwise optional route, you'll either struggle through it, maybe literally, or have to trek all the way through the forest again just to make progress. But it does get a lot better for the second gym. Even if you can't get past Misty's water types, you can just catch a Bellsprout or Oddish North Cerulean and win that way. Between the grass moves they have and Sleep Powder, you can easily cheese your way through it. I just question how they didn't see such an obvious design oversight. Why not put a grass type like Oddish or Bellsprout in the nearby forest? That makes sense. It would have made the early game flow a whole lot better, that's for sure. And it's weird because the game is pretty cleverly designed otherwise. Once you get cut from the SS Anne, you can do pretty much any gym in any order. Lieutenant Surge isn't very difficult, and you can absolutely curb stop him by catching a nearby Diglett, but you don't have to fight him immediately, which is something I really appreciate. Red and Blue actually do a really good job of rewarding the player for paying attention. Like that Diglett I just mentioned, it's right next to Vermilion. Hell, there's nothing stopping you from just catching a level 30-ish Dugtrio instead. Or for the Celadon gym, there's not only Vulpix or Growlithe you can catch directly east of Celadon, but you can also get Ice Beam from a little girl at the department store. The game's already already really easy, but it's pretty cool they put in stuff like that for people that really like to smell the roses. If you're really crafty, you'll realize that getting cut at the SSN is technically optional. You already have the second badge needed to use cut, so why not just trade a Pokemon from another game that already knows it? And since the SSN never leaves, you can come back with a surf to find this little port that you can never find through normal gameplay. You don't get anything from it, but it's so cool to see developers intentionally leaving stuff like this in. The choice to do gyms out of order gives you a lot of leeway in how you approach everything too. I figure it would be easier to save the future gym for later when I can get Earthquake for my Nidoking Silphco. I also figured that I'd fight the Celadon gym once my Vulpix was a higher level, but then I forgot about it and came back with a level 41 Ninetales. Stuff like this increases the game's already insane replayability, and it feels like a natural sense of progression. You can go to new areas to get stronger instead of grinding. But this freedom comes at a cost. Gen 1 is easy, like, painfully, mind-numbingly easy, especially when you know how to exploit it, which isn't that hard to do either. In fact, there were a few times where I did it on accident. Like, I noticed how Lorelei was spamming rest at full health on my Hitmonlee yellow, so I took the opportunity to max out my attack with Meditate to sweep her entire team. The reason why she was doing this is because rest is a psychic move, which is super effective against fighting, but the AI can't distinguish the fact that rest doesn't do any damage, it just knows the psychic is good against fighting, so the psychic move is obviously the best play. In Blue, I did this exact same thing with Lance and spam Blizzard with my Nidoking. For all of Gen 1's mechanical faults, I'd probably enjoy playing it a lot more if the AI wasn't so terrible. There's multiple big fights where the AI outright refuses to attack you at times, and they tend to not have full movesets or use moves that don't do anything, like how Blaine loves to use Roar for no reason or use a potion at full health. Twice. Granted, these are things you won't notice or necessarily care about in the first playthrough, but replayability is in Pokemon's nature, and having the game be so exploitable hurts the replayability for me. Despite how clever the game is in its world and character design, the game mechanics in Red and Blue are not very well thought out. There's so little strategy or planning involved, and if you know what you're doing, you don't have to use your brain or think at all. I was on autopilot most of the time, because it turns out that I can just spam Horn Attack with my Nidoking for a good chunk of the game. You do have a lot of options, yeah, but all it really takes is for you to find one decent strategy, and it works most of the time. It's actually really ironic. There's a few trainers telling you to use strategy and stuff, but then I defeat them by mashing the A button. You can win with brute force, and it's not even that hard to figure out. You're supposed to try and use super effective moves, but when normal type moves get the job done, you don't really need to. Your opponents tend to be pretty on your level too, which can be helpful to raise up new troops, but if you instead just choose to use one or two decent Pokemon, you're practically unstoppable. Granted, the game encourages you to use more than just one Pokemon, but you really don't have to. There was a reason why we all sold the game with a starter at one point. Okay, yeah, I'm sure you're thinking, of course it's exploitable, of course it's easy, it's a kid's game. Why does that matter? No, I'm serious. Why does it matter the Pokemon is a kid's game? Why should it be judged any differently from other games and so many adults clearly still enjoy it? Minecraft is one of the most popular kids games around. I don't hear anyone ever call it a kids game. Ocarina of Time has the same age rating, but it's not considered a kid's game. In fact, it's one of the most critically acclaimed games of all time. Yeah, Pokemon is aimed at a younger audience, but Kirby is also an easy baby game, and I don't hear that ever called a kid's game. Like seriously, where is the line drawn? How is Pokemon a kid's game? But Kirby isn't. My friend Peppa Pig is a kid's game. Pokemon is just a game. If I played any game with the same issues, I'd still bring them up. Why should Pokemon get a free pass? Alright, while the comments completely ignore that last paragraph, let's move on. While Pokemon would eventually have actual mechanical depth for those who want it, Gen 1 does not. If anyone has ever said that Pokemon doesn't have any kind of depth or strategy, they either never bothered looking into it or they only played the originals, because it was kind of true back then. There aren't any hidden mechanics that the game doesn't tell you about or any rabbit holes to go down to learn about Pokemon genetics and EV training or whatever. What you see is mostly what you get. And I can see why someone might prefer that simplicity, but it's a little too simple for me. Along with the region, Kanto has very simple locales. They're too simple. Almost every location just feels like generic town or generic cave, but there's still a few highlights. Team Rocket having a hidden hideout inside the game corner is pretty cool, even if the base itself is pretty basic. There's these tiles that push you around and you have to navigate through the right ones, which is kind of neat, but not overly interesting, especially with how slow it is. Silphco is in a similar vein. It's this big office building that's been taken over by Team Rocket, and it's this big sprawling place that's easy to get lost in. There's all these teleporters too, which just makes the place even more confusing. It's luckily pretty easy to get through when you know what to do, but it's definitely confusing wandering around this place for the first time. Although, with this place having yellow floor tiles everywhere when you play it in color, it's an eyesore. Kanto's big highlight is obviously Lavender Town. It has a totally different vibe from the rest of the game. Everywhere else is all happy and bubbly, but Lavender Town is haunting and foreboding. This place is all about paying respects and mourning dead Pokemon. And yeah, despite the fact that they've been fainting this whole time, they can actually die. At least lore-wise. You won't permanently lose any of them unless you force it on yourself. I mean, yeah, the circle of life and all that, but when you're a kid, you're just like, damn. Lavender Town really isn't scary or anything, but between the spooky music, the ghosts, learning that your companions are subject to the mortal coil we call life, and the general sense of dread, that sticks out like a sore thumb in this kind of game, which is probably why this place is so memorable to so many people. Although I was weirdly never creeped out by this place as a kid, even when I was playing Yellow. In fact, I actually kind of vibe with it now. That shade of purple they use in Yellow is really soothing to look at. As a kid, I had 2 grandparents die before I was even 5, and I remember going to funerals oddly often. I don't know, maybe Lavender Town never bothered me because I was used to the idea of death earlier than most. You know, I was never freaked out by the Mario 64 piano either. Maybe I was just fearless or something, I don't know. Anyway, the only other Kanto location that particularly sticks out to me is the Pokemon Mansion. It's this abandoned research lab that tried and eventually succeeded in making a clone of the rarest Pokemon in existence. At least Mew is supposed to be. They kind of give it out like candy nowadays. It just has this ominous undertone to it that the rest of the game doesn't have. It feels like you're not supposed to be here. And after you beat the game, you can even go through this random cave and catch the genetic monstrosity they're actually successful in making. I don't know why this cave filled to the brim with powerful wild Pokemon is right next to such a normal town, but whatever. So yeah, there are a few cool places in Kanto, but it's ultimately a pretty boring region overall. Given that this was on Game Boy, I don't really have a problem with that. It's just that it's not interesting enough to revisit like 5 times without giving out a massive aesthetic overall. But hey, all the towns are named after colors, which is pretty cool. They definitely put more effort into the Pokemon themselves and the world they're in, and given that the whole idea of the game is to catch and collect monsters, that was definitely the right call. Design-wise, most of them look really good in their full Ken Sugimori illustrations. Dude's an awesome artist, even back then. And while I do think that the newer, cleaner style is overall better, there's just something about that watercolor 90s charm that I really like too. I've gotten pretty tired of seeing all the Kanto Pokemon everywhere over the years, but there's a reason why they're so iconic. They're simple and feel like they could be an actual species of animal that live in the wild somewhere. We could all picture a Caterpie in the woods or a Ponyta in an open field. In no particular order, my Kanto favorites are Nidoking, Electabuzz, Arcanine, Scyther, Gengar, the Eevee family, Dragonair, Magmar, and Vileplume. Although I didn't use any of them in my 2 playthroughs except Nidoking because I'm weird like that. But while their designs and artwork are top notch, the same can't be said about their sprite work, because good god, have you seen female Nidoran? The original sprites in Red and Green are not good. Some of them, like Hitmonlee, Rattata, and Mr. Mime, look pretty good, but a lot of them just looked bad. Mew looks like an aborted fetus, for God's sake. What is this pose? This thing is built like a meme. But with the blue re-release, which is what the English version is based off of, they did improve most of the sprites to look much better overall. A few do look worse though. I can't even tell what Kabuto is anymore, and they messed up Kafing's design somehow. Look man, Ivysaur on 2 legs is just cursed. And the thing is, I don't really like making fun of art when the game is good, because art is hard. I'll draw stuff as a joke, and even that takes a decent amount of effort. Plus, Game Freak were inexperienced back then, scraped for budget and time, so they probably have better things to worry about than giving the sprites to their dumb monsters immaculately good quality. I just feel a lot more comfortable with it given how much better they are in Yellow. Like, these sprites almost look like pixelated artwork, which is really damn cool. They really stepped up their game with this, and given that they had the Game Boy hardware to work with, they all turned out great. Some of them definitely have weird color palettes, but it's a pretty minor complaint overall. They never updated the back sprites though, a good chunk of which looked awful anyway. Is that supposed to be a Vaporeon? But while they look good by Yellow, how they play is a different story. A good chunk of them just aren't good yet. Gengar is easily one of the more popular ones, but there's no reason to actually use one. Your options for ghost moves are Lick and Nightshade. One is stupidly weak, the other does fixed damage based on your level, and despite the fact that it's port poison, it doesn't learn a single damaging poison type move. So now it's weak to Psychic for literally no reason, which was the thing it was supposed to be good against. In fact, this is glitched, and Psychic is immune to Ghosts in Gen 1, meaning the Psychic's only weakness is Bug, none of which are worth using due to the low stats, except Scyther and Pinsir, which don't learn any Bug-type moves anyway. What I'm trying to say is that literally any Psychic type in this game is a force to be reckoned with Alakazam and Mewtwo practically being unstoppable killing machines. And there's a lot of Pokemon that have stats that don't even make sense. Why does Kingler have 130 attack and 50 special when water moves use special damage? Same with Gengar, but reverse. Burst. Ghost and Poison both do physical damage. Special would later be 2 stats with special attack and special defense, but some are actually better before that change. Namely Flareon, Ninetales, and Rapidash. They all got special defense instead of attack. Why does Flareon need both 130 attack and 110 special? Once it gets Fire Spin or Flamethrower, you just need to teach it Body Slam and it can kind of do everything. And then there's some Pokemon that have good stats but don't learn decent moves. Like Machamp has 130 attack, but the best fighting moves it can learn are Low Kick and Submission, the latter of which does recoil for some reason. It's only 80 power, why does Submission cause recoil? It can luckily learn Earthquake, Dig, and a few good normal type moves, but on my blue team, he ended up being my least powerful party member for no real reason. And speaking of that, some Pokemon have some weird omissions from their move pools. Like Charizard could learn Dig, but not Fly. How? This was fixed in yellow, but others weren't so lucky. King and Queen can't learn Dig, Electro doesn't learn any electric moves from leveling up, Aerodactyl doesn't get any rock moves, Gengar doesn't get any poison moves, the list goes on. And it's really frustrating trying to pick out a team for this game, because it's like, why even make Poliwrath a fighting type if it only learns one regular fighting type move? A lot of these Pokemon are good in later games, but there's so many that just aren't worth using yet. But since we're talking about the Pokemon, let's talk about my own team for a bit. The best part about this series for me is picking out a new team for a different experience, and credit where credit is due. That's true no matter which game you play. I don't play Gen 1 very often, but when I do, I usually pick Pokemon that can abuse the mechanics the most, just because they have use that I normally wouldn't get. Ninetales was a good choice for this, since its special stat went into defense instead of attack. Plus, I could abuse Fire Spin, which sounded fun. I usually played Red because it's objectively the best color, but this time I went with Blue for no other reason than I wanted to use a Ninetales. And since I'm playing Blue, I guess I'll pick Squirtle like some kind of normal person. Even if he is my favorite Gen 1 starter, but I'm not here to talk politics. I wanted to use a Vileplume, but I never gave Victory Bell a chance before, so why not? They would have served the same status abusing role anyway. And at least in Gen 1, I think I like Victory Bell better because of how good the Toxic Wrap combo is. Wrap and Fire Spin immobilize your opponent while they're active, so you can use that to stall out Toxic for an easy kill. It's actually pretty terrifying when you start to think about it. As for why I picked Nidoking, I don't know, I just like Nidoking. This dude was my brute force guy for most of the game. Horn Attack was oddly solid, and because Nidorino bizarrely doesn't learn any good moves past level 14, it was an early fully evolved Pokemon with a Moonstone. Add in the TMs you get later, and this dude's a beast. Earthquake, Surf, Strength, and Blizzard gave him insane coverage to plow through everything. There's a reason why he's used in speedruns. I figured fighting could give some decent coverage, so I decided to use a Machamp to fit that role since I've never used one before. Like I said prior, this dude has an insane attack that he just can't use from not being able to learn very good moves. I gave him Dig to round him out, but he can't do much with just Low Kick and Strength, and my last party member filled the brute force role a lot better. I heard Tauros is one of the best Pokemon in Gen 1, so I had to see for myself, and I kinda agree. Dude's got great attack, great speed, decent special, and a great move pool, so he can do pretty much anything. Just Strength and Thunderbolt alone made this dude into a battering ram that never lost steam. Fire Blast just gave him even more options. And honestly, I named him Frederick because this moveset would probably make him go,
"Pick a god and pray."
Oh yeah, you can name your Pokemon, which is always fun. I don't know why I named my Victory Bell after a One Piece character, but I did. My Machamp didn't even get a name, really. Just, bro. Why not? Or how about naming my Ninetales after a Digimon because I'm an idiot? My favorite name out of these guys was Jeff, because Jeff is not a name you'd expect from a king. You'd laugh at King Jeff and then get executed. And for Blastoise? Bubbles. I'm dumb. No, really, I am dumb. I started making a habit of naming every Pokemon I catch just for fun, and I don't know how I came up with these names. Why would I name this random Weedle Subscribe? Honestly, I had a fun time with these guys. The only one that didn't really pull away was Bro. Everyone else I had was really good. I had an unexpectedly pretty balanced team aside from a massive psychic weakness. And I unexpectedly didn't really care for the music in this game. The composition of these tracks are great given how much they've been remixed over the years, but most of them feel so empty on Game Boy. It feels limited by the hardware. The only ones I really like in the original form are the Gym Leader and Champion themes, Lavender Town, Cinnabar Island, and I guess Celadon City? Because that's the thing, it's kind of hard on the ears with the instruments they had to work with. A lot of tracks just fall flat for me. I really don't know how to describe it. It just doesn't get stuck in my head like it would normally. But I should also go over Yellow version, because there's a lot of obvious and subtle changes to make it a different experience from the normal Gen 1. The most blatant one is that you don't pick a starter in Yellow. You just get a Pikachu that doesn't like to be in a Pokeball and doesn't want to evolve. Almost like Ash's Pikachu or something. This is not a subtle nod, this is just Red and Blue but changed a bit to resemble the anime more. The police are replaced with Officer Jenny, nurses are Nurse Joy, Brock and Misty have different outfits, Jesse and James show up for very easy fights, Giovanni has a Persian, and you even get all 3 starters. Blue's default name is Gary now, and he gets an Eevee whose evolution is actually determined by whether or not you win the first 2 fights. But it's Flareon most of the time because I always forget about the optional fight West of Viridian. Blue, Gary. It's really weird, I always called him Gary as a kid because of the anime, but I see him as Blue now. Anyway, Gary has a much different team from Blue. He's actually a lot easier than before. The only comebacks are his Alakazam and Executor. Otherwise, his team is oddly weak. You probably wouldn't have much trouble against him. It's a bizarre change. In fact, a lot of gyms have curious changes. Like Surge only has a Raichu. Yeah, it's like that in the anime. Pikachu doesn't need to evolve or whatever, but you just one-shot him with a dig. He's barely a boss. And Koga has 3 Venonats. Why in the hell do you need 3 Venonats? And Sabrina somehow becomes the hardest boss in the game because she has a level 50 Abracadabra and Alakazam for the 6th gym. What the hell? Although my main issue with Yellow is that its replayability is oddly low for Pokemon. You have 1 starter choice, and they give you all 3 starters anyway, which in and of itself goes against the point of picking a starter. All 3 are great in their own ways, but you only get 1, so you have to choose wisely. What kind of Pokemon do you want? When you have all 3, you're unstoppable. From there, you might as well throw in an Alakazam and nothing can touch you. I had the most normie team possible for Yellow. Pikachu, all 3 starters, Alakazam, and Hitmonlee. And it was kind of boring. I was so hilariously well balanced, there was even less challenge than Blue. And because you always have a Pikachu, you always had to fight the first gym the same way by catching a Mankey or Nidoran. And because Pikachu's stats haven't been changed, you'll probably end up benching him because he's just not strong enough to keep up. In fact, I benched half my team because it was more effective to just use Charizard, Alakazam, and Blastoise. I always liked Charizard, but never really understood how its most popular Pokemon of all time good. But after this, I kinda get it. Gen 1 Charizard is a monster. Flamethrower, Dig, Fly, and Slash makes this dude one of the best sweepers in the game. Everything dies before it gets a chance to land a hit on you. And yeah, you don't have to use the starters or Pikachu, but at that point, why are you even playing Yellow? Granted, I still had a decent time with Yellow back when I played it. God, almost 2 years ago? Yeah, my Yellow footage is from a while ago, which is why it's only 720p. Not that it matters that much. I just figured that if I played both flavors of Gen 1 back to back, I'd get burnt out on it. Because Pokemon Red and Blue is a game that I doubt I'll come back to often, if ever. There isn't much reason to anymore when Fire Red and Leaf Green exist. Sure, I know some people prefer playing the originals as opposed to the remakes or remasters, but it's the philosophy I don't personally live by, and most don't from what I've seen. Maybe it's just the programmer in me, but video games are different from movies. They can be improved and modernized much more easily without changing the core experience. Obviously, there's certain parts of the game design that you can't change, but Pokemon Red and Blue are one of the best examples of how much of a difference a good remake can make. Red and Blue in a vacuum are great games, but when you start bringing every other Pokemon game into the equation, they've aged really poorly and have a billion issues that get in the way of truly enjoying it. Issues that aren't there in Fire Red and Leaf Green, which is still somehow the best way to play these games in my opinion. So if you somehow still haven't played these games and only have the motivation for one playthrough, start there. In spite of that, I still have a lot of respect for these original games. I really couldn't stand Red and Blue when I played the 3DS re-release. I powered through it, but they felt too archaic. Yet after looking at them more critically, it's hard to outright dislike them. They did a lot right, and there was a ton of charm. It's easy to see why Red and Blue won the hearts of millions. The game had an unparalleled knack to make you care about stylized text files that continue to this day, and it genuinely feels like a game that everyone has to play once in some way before they die. Pokemon Red and Blue are classics. For better and for worse. But oh my god, are things only uphill from here. I probably won't get to Crystal immediately. The reviews for these games are gonna take a lot of effort. But after talking about this one so much, I'm really just gonna replay Crystal now, so it might happen sooner rather than later. I kinda forgot how much I like these games. But regardless of what I decide to ramble about next, this has been Flame Guy. And no, Mew isn't under that stupid truck. Take care, and I'll see you all next mission.